Good Shabbos again, everyone. We're all familiar with Hans Christian Andersen, his fables that for generations have taught children and adults important lessons. One of those fables is the Ugly Duckling. The Ugly Duckling who didn't fit in well with all the other ducks. She would look at her reflection in the water and couldn't understand why she was different. Yet when she came into her own, she discovered with whom she belonged as a graceful swan. And there she felt the pride and purpose of her own identity. The reminder being that there is a place and role for each and every one of us. And we can share our identity with others and find meaning in belonging to the group whose values, to the group whose experiences resonate with our own. As my teacher, Rabbi Ron Shulman, writes, self-respect and respect for others are two sides of the same coin. We live at a time when this idea seems to have lost some of its currency. We work so hard to treat everyone alike that we forget that there are important differences between us. I don't think any of us wants to live in a world where everyone is the same. Yes, treated with equality and respect, but I want my own life to be enriched by the different perspectives and truths of other people's lives. I want to organize my own understandings according to those actions and ideas of others that I may accept or I may reject. Our tradition, our Torah, also organizes the world by differences, by categories, by distinctions. God's creation is from chaos to order, night and day, winter and spring, summer and fall. There are moral categories, that which is right to do and that which is not okay to do. And there are social categories, those who share in the ethics and vision of what monotheism is and the beliefs of others who reflect a different encounter of history or faith. And there are food categories, that which is proper or kosher to eat and that which is not okay to eat. As we read again in our Torah portion today, kashrut, the Jewish dietary tradition, is among Judaism's most creative and significant practices. Often misunderstood, many of us do not see the ethics, sensitivity, and holiness that are the core values and purposes of keeping kosher. We figure it's a relic from ancient times that lacked refrigeration in the FDA. But kashrut is a primary expression of Jewish identity. It binds together those Jews who practice the Torah's moral imperative to sanctify and revere life. It teaches us that life is organized in categories. Some animals have split hooves and chew their cud. Other animals have different distinguishing features. What matters is that we are limited in the life we take and ingest for ourselves. We separate life from death and place them in proper perspective. We are conscious as we consume milk or meat, aware that we must nurture our souls along with our bodies when we eat. We make a crucial distinction. We appreciate differences, even when it comes to the food we eat. We appreciate differences. And I know we all agree, none of us wants to live in a world where everything and everyone is the same. We want to be enriched by the perspectives and truths of others. We want diversity. We appreciate and cherish differences. We crave originality and uniqueness. But I often find, unless it comes to our own children. Yes, my friends, too often I see parents and grandparents who sometimes put so much pressure on their children to act in a certain way, to believe in a unique way, to believe in a way like their parents, to dress and look a certain way, to become an ideal, to become a vision of what the parents want and desire, to become almost carbon copies of who they are, instead of what is best for their particular child. I recently had a young 16-year-old girl in my office crying. a good kid, growing and learning, makes good grades, hardworking, a good person, a good soul. But she was bawling in my office because of what her parents had said to her. Her parents had told her that she wasn't such a great kid because she wasn't eating in the right way. She wasn't thin enough. Her parents, in many ways, are health nuts. They work out every day, and there's nothing wrong with that. They're very conscious of what they eat. But they didn't see that their child, their daughter, was doing the same. And so they missed the point of who their daughter was, and instead made her feel so awful about herself because she didn't look like they did. I've often found the best parents are the ones who let go of what they want for their children to become and instead cherish and love who their children become themselves, who their children really are, especially when their children become who they are on their own. Because in the words of the Mishnah, there is no one who doesn't have their hour, and there's no one who doesn't have their rightful place. I think we'd all agree that we want our children to become happy. But the best way for them to become most satisfied and happy is finding their unique purpose on this earth. To live up to their promise, not to live up to our vision. Of course, we should guide them, give them a good education, live by the values that we want them to inherit. But ultimately, it's up to our children to become who God wanted them to be. We as parents or even grandparents, can we give up some control? Yes, I know it's not easy. So much pressure on parents today, especially in the Jewish community, to have children that get into the right schools, make the most money, to have children that find the perfect spouse. This week, I watched an incredible documentary on Netflix. Maybe many of you have seen it, called Operation Varsity Blues, the college admissions scandal. You remember that scandal right before the pandemic? The scores of people across the country and in Hollywood paying exorbitant amounts of money to get their children into the right universities. It's a great documentary behind the scam to get the kids of the rich and famous into top U.S. universities. It's how I got my son in the UT. Parents who act like they are the ones who are applying to college, instead of remembering that it is their children who are applying and need to find the right place for themselves. It's so sad as you watch this documentary. You see parents who seem to have it all, risk so much, pay so much to make their kids who they think they should become, instead of treasuring and cherishing who their children really are. These parents felt the pressure, thinking that, and perhaps rightfully so, that they would be judged by which college their child attended. How often do we ask parents, what college does your child go to? Immediately judging the parents on how they did by which college their child attends. But instead, can we ask parents, is your child happy? Is he or she becoming who they should become? Do we want our children to look at themselves as ugly ducklings, to not recognize who they've become because they become a vision of what their parents wanted? Or can we let them, our precious young, create their own categories, make their own decisions, find their own sense of pride and their own sense of purpose in the identities they create for themselves? Our young can add something irreplaceable to the world if we can let them embrace what makes them unique. The aspects that make them the most unique are the things that make them the most powerful. That's what we as Jews have been doing for over 3,000 years. We too, as Jews, belong to a category of sacred identity. As we read this morning, for I, the eternal, am your God. You shall sanctify yourselves and be holy, for I am holy. Holy, uniqueness, means to be distinct, to be different, to be who we are. In a way, holiness is what the ugly duckling discovered she was too. It means to be unique, it means to be distinct, it means to be precious in your own existence to become who you should become. Kashrut, keeping kosher, and so much of what we do as Jews, so much of Jewish life, helps us to celebrate and appreciate this ideal. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.